Sambuddho Sawakato Yena Bhagavata Dhammo Supatipano Yasa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Tamayang Bhagavantang Satamang Sasangang Imehi Saka Rehiyatarahang Aropite Hiyapi Pujayama Sadhu Bhante Bhagava Suchira Pariniputopi Pachima Janata Nukampamanasa Ime Sakare Dugata Panakara Bhute Patikan Hatu Amhakang Dikharatang Hitaya Sukhaya Alahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Suwakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammi Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vija Charana Sampano Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purissa Dhammasarati Sata Deva Manu Sanang Buddho Bhagava Tamahang Bhagavantang Abhipujayami Tamahang Bhagavantang Sirasa Namami Supatipano Suwakato. That was the shortened version. Suwakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akariko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pachatang Veditabo Inyuhi Tamahang Dhammang Abhipujayami Tamahang Dhammang Sirasanamami. Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ujjapatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yaya Patipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sami Chipatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yatitang Chatari Purisa Yugani Ata Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttara Punya Ketak Lokasa Tamahang Sangham Abhipujayami Tamahang Sangham Sirasanamami. No, just go on. Very good. Thank you. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with her body boundless heart, should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, freed from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sorry? So let's get straight into the questions. See how many can finish off. The first question. Dear Ajahn, there is so much conflict these days. What would you say to the world leaders who create this war to help them choose peace? And what can we do spiritually to help the victims of war? Thank you. I know that once somebody told me that they had a big conference here in Australia, and one of the people at the conference, he was the editor of the Spectator magazine. And he said that research which he'd seen that meditation really helps. But he said it in a way which I never expected to see from the editor of a Spectator magazine in London. He said, what you need to do is to get spiritual people, and instead of dropping bombs in these war zones, drop these spiritual people in these war zones. And just the fact that they're meditating and good people, that will solve all the problems. And I must say at the time, because I'm a naughty monk, I thought, I can think of a few monks I would like to drop into. That was only a joke. But that sometimes you feel hopeless sometimes. All these wars keep happening. They get worse and then they get better and then they get worse again. And sometimes, if you know your history, there's always been these wars. It's as if, I don't know if you accept this, but it's as if that sometimes that some people need wars. And that unfortunately that affects so many other people. And eventually those people who fight those wars, they learn the stupidity of it. But in the meantime, much is destroyed. But as they are destroying things in each other's lives, there is a lot of learning happens. But what happens with those people who learn? Those people get reborn to higher realms afterwards, which means that then more people come into samsara, into these realms of existence, and there's more people who would just do stupid things. And the simile which I used to actually explain this is, suppose that from say Mars or somewhere, some extraterrestrial planet, they did a quick sent like a delegation to check out what Earth was like. And they came 20 years ago. And they checked one of the schools, like year 6. And they looked at what they were learning, how they behaved. And then 10 years later they came back again. And they looked at the children in grade 6. And they're still studying the same things, still behaving in the same way. And then they come 10 years later today, and they check the people in grade 6. And they're still doing the same things. It looks like we've always got schools teaching the same things as I learned when I was at school. They think, my goodness, these kids learn nothing. Just like they come to Jhana Grove 20 years ago, and they see you doing exactly the same things, still just doing the same tricks and the same defilements, and they come 10 years later and still the same defilements, 10 years later, still the same things. They don't realize that those people I taught 20 years ago are mostly gone. At least some of you have gone. In other words, it's as if like some people keep making the same mistake, but it's not the same people making the same mistake. That's what it appears like. These new people feel that that's the way to, which needs to be done in this world, but they learn. And don't be too concerned, about things like death and injury, which actually happen, because that's only in our body. I'm talking about the spiritual life of a human being. That body, eventually, we all die and do stupid things, but hopefully we learn from that so we don't have to keep coming back to this school or to this retreat center in this particular life. We can actually graduate eventually. We learn, make mistakes, hopefully learn. We do actually get better, and then eventually become fully enlightened. Seeing the bigger picture. I could never really understand when some of the people you meet, they're your friends. I know this is one thing which can help, is actually what I like about the current world. Despite people who just want to protect their own territory, that we do actually mix up. Look how many people in this room. How many people in this room are indigenous people? You're from all sorts of different lands. And many of those lands we used to fight each other. But these days, we're friends. I kind of like that idea. Buddhism is a high-minded spiritual path, and we don't care what you look like. We don't care what your gender orientation is. We don't care just what your age is and what diseases you have. You're welcome. I told somebody today that didn't want to be close to me because they thought they had some sort of disease. I said, no, Buddhism is all into sharing. And the point is we actually learn from all of these experiences, so we don't need to do them again. It's almost like in this school called, Planet Earth, that some people have to do these stupid things. And I don't think you can't stop them. After a while, we always think having a war to end all wars. Does that ever happen? Some people want a war. Can you have it somewhere else, please? But anyway, we try our best to be as kind and compassionate as we possibly can. And when you are not in a war zone, please talk to one another, understand one another, make friends who are not born in the same country or race as you are. So that gives a huge amount of tolerance to people who don't look the same as you. You understand them and you can be kind to them. Sometimes it's a simple thing which I say, I was happy that my parents were poor because I went to a school which was multicultural in London in when did I go to that school? I was born in 1951. This is just the ordinary primary school. And there was people from all sorts of different lands. And I said, as long as you can play a good soccer match, you're on my team. I didn't concern what colour you were, what race you were. And I do remember just One of my mates was Sri Lankan, another one was from Jamaica. He was really good fun. And other people from, especially many people from Poland. And I didn't care where they came from, as long as they were kind and good. They were my friends, and they remained my friends. You know another person who went to the same primary school as I did? I only found this out this year. He became an actor called Alan Rickman, otherwise known as Professor Snape. He went to the same school as I did. And so I know. You know who Professor Snape is? You don't. Oh my goodness. And I do, that's embarrassing. He was in the Harry Potter movies, one of the stars there. And apparently he's a very fierce and scary school teacher. And I know that if you're a school teacher like that, you base it on some of your own experiences. And I thought, in the school where I was a member, primary school, so what teacher had he based his character on? Who was the most fearsome teacher in that school? And I know who that was. There was this teacher called Mr. Jones. He was a disciplinarian there, and everybody was scared of him. But to say what I got up to, I don't know, that sometimes I did do different things. I remembered my father coming home from school, and no, I've already started, I can't stop. My father came home from school from his work one afternoon. He had the afternoon off work, and he said he had these 2 tickets to Wembley Stadium to see a World Cup soccer match. It was a soccer qualifying match. And he said, "Oh, it's such a shame you have to go to school this afternoon. You could have come with me." He had 2 tickets. I said, "Well, I can ask." And the teacher I had to ask was this really fierce Mr. Jones. So I went up to him, and just after I got back from lunch at home, and I went up to him and said, "Sir, my dad has got these 2 tickets to go and see this World Cup qualifier. Could you please put your fingers in your ears, because it was England versus Poland." And I said, England won. But anyhow, and so he looked at me, that I had the nerve to ask to take the afternoon off school just to watch a soccer match. And he looked at me and said, "Don't see why not, off you go." What I learned from that is always to be courageous. It was a great lesson, because no one expected he would say yes, but you got nothing to lose. And all my friends at school, they were so jealous. They were in the school studying, and I was out watching a football match with his permission. So anyway, that was Severus Snape. Where was I going with this anyway? I forget now. What's the question? Oh yeah, like violence in the world and wars. Sometimes you can make friends with anybody. You make friends with anybody. But violence and wars. Get to know people. One of those examples which came up, one other experience in Bunbury Beach. Now this wasn't with sort of any 18-year-old, 17-year-old. I know the 17-year-old because that's when you finished the school education and do the exams. I was on that beach meditating, but it wasn't the end of exam period, it was earlier. And that as I was meditating, I heard this whew, go past my head. And I thought, that was interesting. And then I heard another one. And then somebody shouting out, "Get off our beach, Rajneeshi." There's a couple of school kids, and they thought I was, a student of that Bhagawan Sri Rajneesh, and he had a very bad reputation in West Australia at that time. And then another stone, they're throwing stones at me, and none had hit yet, I've always got some good karma there, thank goodness. But they were getting closer. It's only a matter of chance. I knew my probability theory. Even if they weren't aiming for me, the aim was so bad that one would hit me. So what do you do when people are throwing stones at you? So you get up, turn around and walk towards them. Out of compassion, I'm giving them a closer shot. And it's kind of like, that's my character. So anyway, I walked towards them. And there's about, I forget exactly how many, 7, 8, about 13, 14-year-olds. When I walked towards them, they sort of ran away, all except one stayed. And I went up to him and said, look, I don't care if I'm a Vaishnava or anything, but actually I'm a Buddhist monk, but you shouldn't throw stones at people sitting on the beach, they're not doing any harm there. And anyway, I said, I'm a Buddhist monk. We don't, we've got a very good precepts. I'm going this evening into the prison to teach meditation to people to make them better people. And then he started asking me questions about Buddhism, and then all the other kids came back. It was a great opportunity to teach some Dharma to these kids. And I said, oh, thank you, we shouldn't have thrown stones at you. And that's how that violence not just ended, but I could actually teach them something. And so there's a beautiful opportunity. That's little things you can do to try and make amends. What about the current war in Ukraine and Russia? And I think you all know, I did announce this some time ago, that many of the talks which I do on a Friday night in those times and other talks, there's a gentleman over in Prague who asked, can I please translate some of these talks or dub them, the talks, into Ukrainian? And I said, no, so I can send them out for free. And I said, no, unless you also dub them into Russian as well. Have to be fair, both sides, I'm not going to judge. And so that's what he's been doing. So, and he gives them out for free, so people can download them, sort of give them out to their friends. There's a lot of work for him, but so that's how I can get involved anyway, by trying to send these talks out to both sides in the war. A lot of time people are in wars and they don't really want to be, but basically they get almost compelled into it. So there's little things you can do. It's not much, but at least it's something we can do. So those are the sorts of things you can do. But for you, please make a lot of friends outside your local groups and cultures. That's why, it's weird. It's Ajahn Brahm, aren't you busy enough? Why don't you just teach the Buddhists more? No way. If I have an opportunity to teach the Jewish community or even the Anglican community. Many of you know what I did with the Anglican community years ago. I made a lot of friends with some of the senior Anglican clerics, including one of my best friends. He was the dean of St. George's Cathedral. A very nice guy. And then, that eventually he said, I've had an idea, Ajahn Brahm. Why don't you come and give the Sunday sermon at the cathedral one day? And he said, that's never been done before. These guys know what they're talking about because they're great scholars. So give the Sunday sermon at the Perth Cathedral, a full Eucharist. It's never been done before for 2,000 years. Really? Yeah, I'm in. So that's what I did. It's really great. So I gave the usual, no too bad bricks and open the door of your heart and all that sort of stuff. But they loved it. And were any of you there for that occasion? I was. But I remember just going into that cathedral on Sunday and looking. It was a packed house. I mean, it really was packed. Not enough seats for everybody. They were standing up. And then when I gave the talk, I looked at all the audience. Half of them I could remember. Half of them were from the Noramara temple. and the other half I never knew. They were the Christians. And it was wonderful that we could give all these lovely talks, and together, even though totally different basis of religion, but all the people there were all human beings. But one of the downsides of that, the news, I don't know if it's Channel 7 or Channel 9, one of them, they heard about it. They wanted to do an interview with me, live to air. Have you ever done a live to air interview? Apparently in those days you had to wear makeup. And that wasn't so bad, except when I was putting on that makeup, Ajahn Brahm was with me. He didn't have to put up makeup, just me. And he was looking at me in right. And apparently the only person who never put on that makeup was this guy. They said, I asked him, has anyone actually refused? He said, only one in the whole history of that TV channel in Perth. It was actually an Oasis singer, I think, Noel Gallagher or something. Does that make sense? Anyway, he refused. But I didn't know about that, otherwise I'd be number 2. But anyway, that was really good fun, because I was doing that, for the sake of harmony. Yeah, you have different beliefs. We're all human beings, and so can't we actually learn from one another, grow from one another? And that was one of the reasons why, actually not reasons why, because it's a long timeline, whenever we wanted, first we moved into our Nolamala Centre, that was a Christian church before. And when we said we'd like to buy it, because they weren't using it, and then they said, well, who are you? Oh, you're the Buddhists. Oh, that's not a problem. And so then they had to deconsecrate it because it wasn't being used by Christians anymore. But they were very happy to give it to us, or not give it, but sell it to us. So I kind of think that more of us should be able to make those connections between those who are different than us. Actually go out and do that, so that we can understand different people who populate this world. And we can have arguments with them, but never to the point of fights or wars or anything. I mean, whoever wants to actually control anybody? That's what we have wars for. I want to control your country and charge you, all the taxes, or I don't like you, I want to take over the resources or the access or whatever. People would, give you access if you ask for it nicely, share things with you. Why do you want to own things? I say owning this huge tract of property. I mean, that's a Buddhist society, not me. Anyway, I should stop going further there. What can you do if you can't establish mindfulness or stillness in meditation? E.g., on an hour with many thoughts, scenarios echoing in my head. It would not stop. Okay, one of my experiences, 6 rains as a monk. I had this monastery in the north I was staying in a monastery in the north of Thailand. It was up in the mountains, it was cool, it was already built, I didn't have to do any work, and all the people wanted me to do was to receive their food. And their food was just what I liked, my type of food in Thailand. Example that many examples. Once that they had a papaya tree just outside the cave where I used to sit. And this is where you get the story from of what to do with a truckload of dung. Because just outside that cave there was a mango tree. And that mango would get all the bat poo from all the hundreds of bats inside the cave who go out in the morning and at night time, and all the hundreds who came back at night time. And that, not mango tree, papaya tree was so well fertilized. And because it had so much bat poo around it, whenever you saw a papaya just about to go red and just be ripe, I would tell the lay people, I can't say, please get me that papaya. All you needed to do is say, oh, that's a nice papaya up there. And they'd offer it to me. And the big papayas, I'd eat the whole lot. And I did that because it's so delicious, the sweetest, juiciest mangoes I've ever eaten in my life. To this day, never tasted anything as gorgeous as that. And what was it I was eating? It was bat poo. The bat poo went on the ground, got absorbed by the papaya tree, and became this beautiful papaya. And that's where I get that simile from. If things go wrong in your life, and you get lots and lots of bat poo or dog poo or any poo, please dig it in under your papaya tree or mango tree. And then your papayas and mangoes will be the most delicious you've ever eaten in your life. And out of respect, because I told you the story, you must always offer one to me. And that's greed, sorry. But they are beautiful. So that's what to do with the dung of life. Okay. Oh, so anyway, the same monastery. This is an interesting story, and it's honest. It would be embarrassing for me to tell you this if, the outcome wasn't so amazing. So, I was meditating at all the time in the world, and hardly any duties, staying by myself in this monastery. The lay people just disappear, in the afternoon. I should say it was right in the middle of a tea plantation. I had as much tea as I could ever drink. It was like paradise for me. As an English monk, me. And just one day, the mind started going restless. And I started thinking about all sorts of thoughts. I was only 6 years as a monk, about 29. Still young, very thin, still have lots of prospects in this world. And so I started thinking about old girlfriends. So no, stop it, Ajahn Brahm. You're a monk. I like being a monk. But I couldn't get them out of my mind. I wonder what she's doing now. She was very nice. And no, stop it. And every time I tried to stop those thoughts coming in my mind, you know what happened? They got stronger. And then it got to the point after 3 or 4 days, a long time, I had no one to talk to. I just found it going crazy. All these thoughts, I couldn't stop them. And so, out of desperation, I went to the Buddha statue in the hall, no one else to speak to, bowed 3 times and asked help, wanting some inspiration. And the idea which came into my mind was, do a deal. Stupid inspiration, but this is what happened. The deal was, from 3 to 4 p.m. every afternoon, I would just allow my mind to think whatever it wanted. The rest of the day it would watch the breathing. So if you want to think those stupid thoughts, okay, 3 to 4 p.m., anything goes. My sort of stupid time, sexy time you might call it, I don't know. People, that's very funny coming from an old monk. Yeah, I suppose it is. But anyway, so I always keep my promises, and so I was there. It didn't help. It was still a struggle to keep my mind on the breath. Be watching the breath go in, breath going out. She was not. No, stop it. And so it came to 3 p.m. I was tired, so I went up to my little hut, leant against the wall, and said, "Look, mind, you can think whatever you want now. I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to try and get rid of silly thoughts. You can think whatever you want." And what happened next is still kind of unbelievable. Well, not now, because I understand how the mind works. At that time, I couldn't believe it. For the next hour, I watched every breath without missing one. So easy. When I gave my mind full permission to think the most racy thoughts I'd be embarrassed to tell anybody about. And they watched every breath. What was going on? What I was doing was being kind, having a ceasefire with my own mind. You can do whatever you want, mind. I'm still be kind to you. And they didn't want to do anything like, silly thoughts. They just wanted to stay with the breath. That's how I establish mindfulness and stillness in meditation without any thoughts. Relax and let it be. When you start fighting the mind, you have more thoughts, crazy thoughts. When you can just be with your breath or be with your mind, you can do whatever you want, mind. I care for you. And become a friend to your mind. Your mind just doesn't want to go anywhere. It stays with you. So remember, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. every afternoon. And then at least you'll be able to meditate, watch every breath between 3 and 4. So that's when the mind doesn't wander off. It doesn't want to wander off. How many of you just would like to leave Jhana Grove tomorrow? Why not? Are you enjoying it? Why many of you come into these talks and evening Q&A? You're just hearing the same old jokes over and over and over. Why don't you go back to your room? Because you're enjoying it. You're feeling some kindness and some respect, and things which make sense to you. That's why you like to stay. Not through force. Do we ever just put a machine gun at the entrance there so that if anybody leaves early, that's not how you kept here. It's because you're enjoying it and finding it useful and being respected. So that's actually how we keep people in a retreat center. You know the story of this place. How hard is it to actually get a place on this retreat? Actually, it's very easy. I don't have a problem getting a place. You guys do. But because you're enjoying it. That's actually how to keep the mindfulness, in this moment. Because it's just too nice in this moment. Who wants to go anywhere else? Anyway, if only the present moment exists, then can we say nothing exists except where we are this moment? Yeah, even that question doesn't exist now. No, it doesn't. It's gone. Dear Ajahn, some teachers, practitioners speak of stillness or awakened awareness. That's kind of a repeat of the same word. If you're awake, you're aware. If you're aware, you're awake. You can't be asleep awareness. It's not really aware. Anyway, I don't know what other teachers do. They say that the awakened awareness is not dependent upon the 5 khandhas. Oh boy. I don't know where they got that from. That's crazy stuff. Awakened awareness is not dependent on the 5 khandhas. That everything is dependent upon the 5 khandhas, except when the 5 khandhas cease and never arise again. As one of the quotes of the Buddha is that a person who is an enlightened person knows, fully enlightened, an arahat, they know that once these 5 khandhas cease, I think they call it, they use the sense basis description. Once the 6 sense bases cease, including the mind, then no other sense bases arise in any which way whatsoever ever again. Cessation is cessation. Full. This is what the Buddha said. And the Akiwachagota Sutta, I love this sutta. To paraphrase it, when this wanderer Vachagota asks the Buddha, well, what happens, when a person becomes enlightened and passes away? Does that mean that, where does their being go? And then the Buddha replied, suppose you see like an oil lamp. You see the flame. What is that flame? It's just a result of three causes. The wick, this is actually a candle, but it's good enough. You see the wick, the wax, and the heat. When those three come together, you have a candle flame. What happens if the wax is exhausted, the heat is blown away, or the wick is all burnt through? What happens to the flame? If it's been a good flame, does it go to the heaven realm where all flames live happily ever after? It's a crazy idea, isn't it? Or if it's been a really bad flame and burnt people's fingers, is it going to go to some hell realm where all the flames get tormented forever? Another silly idea. When it goes out, it ceases. That's all. It disappears. It was just three causes. Nothing gets destroyed. The flame was just a result of these three causes. When the three causes separate, disappear, then the flame disappears. And the thing I like about that was the word which they used, for a flame going out. And this is in the Ratana Sutta. Actually, you were talking about the Ratana Sutta in your interview today. That's why it has some incredible Dhamma in there. Kinang Puranang Nawang Nati Sambawang Virata Chitai Kepa Wasaming Te Kina Bija Avivolhi Chanda Yatayang Padipo. I missed something there. Nibanti Dira Yatayang Padipo. What does that Nibanti mean? It's actually the noun which is associated with it is a verb which is associated with the noun Nibbana. It literally means it Nibbanas, the lamp. The flame Nibbanas. It was a word in common usage. So if you were a little kid in the time of the Buddha and the wind blew the flame out, or there was not enough oil left in the lamp, you'd say to your mummy, "Mummy, mummy, the flame's Nibbanad, the flame's Nibbanad." It was a common word for the flame going out. Where does the flame go? Again, there's no home for enlightened flames. Anyway, where am I going here? Not dependent on the five khandhas. That doesn't make any sense, and it's against the Buddha's teachings. And not dependent upon conditionality. Oh my goodness. If it's not dependent on conditionality, it's not aware. Awareness stops. In Nibbanas, ceases. They say this awakened awareness is unconditioned. Oh my goodness. There is a word in Pali which I think I should introduce now. It is called Gomayang. Some of you heard that word before. Go is the word for a male cow, a bull. Mayang is what comes out of the back end of a bull. It's bullshit. I don't mind calling it that. Okay, it's not that, just to be sort of open to different ways of thinking about things, but it's definitely wrong, not the Buddha's teachings. This is a point of confusion for me because I thought only Nibbana is unconditioned. Even Nibbana, what is Nibbana? Nibbana is nothing. Things ended, it's cessation. Nothing left. Because what happens is somebody thinks, Nibbana is unconditioned. So, when you become fully enlightened, you go to Nibbana and live happily ever after in the unconditioned. I always call these fantasies like the wishful thinking for the ultimate retirement home where you can live happily ever after. That Cinderella idea, is even for Buddhist monks and nuns, to get to the place where you can live happily ever after with nothing else to do. So you work so hard to become enlightened, and then you can stay there forever enjoying bliss. That's Gomayang. You cease without remainder. Anyway, due to the fact that it doesn't exist, i.e. being the ending of craving. I acknowledge this is way over my head, but I ask you out of genuine desire, ask for genuine desire to understand. Things cease, ending, everything ends. But you say, one other thing is, I remember just having this discussion with people. They say, there's one thing as a physicist or as a scientist you should all know, what's called the conservation of mass energy. You can't destroy things. You can't add to them. In this universe, the sum total of mass energy never changes. It can transform from mass to energy, move from this place to that place. It can never be increased, never can be decreased. And that's kind of similar. Human being, all that sort of energy of the mind, can it be just disappear? It can cease without remainder? Of course. How does that happen? How does this universe begin and cease? If you can imagine just all the energy of this universe, all the mass of stuff, stars, forces, everything, all come together, be drawn all together. Would that be like a concentration of energy so powerful like a sun or like a black hole? What would it be like? There are things in this universe which you can say legitimately is negative energy. I don't mean sort of emotional stuff. Anything which is in a gravitational field, even like this thing, it's got a negative component. If I want to take this outside of the Earth's gravitational field, I have to use some of its mass energy. Just what's inside here. I don't know how much will be left if this is outside the Earth's gravitational field. Any massive object has a negative component of energy. And I remember saying this to Professor Blair. This is our local professor of physics at UWA. But you know what he did to me, Professor Blair? Now, he really respected my understanding of physics, and he nominated me, and now I'm a member of the Australian Institute of Physics. And I get all this blurb about, please come to our next meeting, or please come to our AGM and stuff. But I remember just one of these seminars over in UWA we were talking at, and I said, imagine that all this positive energy and negative energy of the universe, mass energy, if it all came together, and all the positive energy in this universe balanced completely the negative energy. So when it all came together, it wouldn't explode. It would go poof and go out. What if that all, the sum total, amounted to zero? I remember him looking at me, turning around and saying, "You're really up to date, Ajahn Brahm," for a Buddhist monk especially. "You're really up to date. Omega equals 1. That's the balance." So all this universe, everything in this universe, the mass energy, can actually come from nothing and go back to nothing, including each one of you and your minds. The energy of consciousness. Zero-sum game. That's physics. Anyway, that whole idea, when people think nothing can be destroyed, of course nothing gets destroyed. Just this process comes to an end. The causes and effects cancel. Cessation happens. What does cessation mean? What do I mean like emptiness mean? How? Okay, I'll use this one. This is Buddhist. This is Anuruddha. You heard about the monk Anuruddha? Some of you have. He was one of the very senior monks in the Sangha in the time of the Buddha, and a very great meditator, enlightened being. But anyhow, that when he was young, he told a story that he came from a very wealthy family, but also because of past karma, that he would never hear the word, there's nothing. If he wanted something, he would actually have to come. The word nati, that was a word for there isn't any, that he wouldn't hear, or he wouldn't actually experience. So, as a kid, he was playing marbles with his friends, and he kept on losing every time. And he was betting his lunch, and that day the lunch was natty cakes. He had all these lovely little cakes his mum had made for him. Sorry, no, I got that wrong. His mother made him all these cakes for him, and he was betting them with his friend, and he kept on losing. But because he was wealthy, every time he ran out of cakes, he told his attendant, please can you get me some more cakes from my mum? And so the attendant would go to the mum, get some more cakes, and then he'd lose them too. And he kept on losing them and losing and losing until he sent his attendant to his mum's house, and his mum replied, natty cakes, there is no more cakes. We've run out. So his attendant sort of returned to Anuruddha, but because of this karma from the past, this young man called Anuruddha, according to his karma, he couldn't hear the word nati anymore. So the heavenly beings had to put into the basket some of their cakes. Because of that vow, they had to make sure that they helped keep the law of karma. So the heavenly beings put some cakes in there. And so when the attendant came back, Anuruddha said, have you got the cakes? And his attendant said, natty cakes. Well, the word meant there aren't any cakes. But then he opened up the basket, and it was the most delicious, fragrant cakes you've ever had in your whole life. And he said, what are you talking about? Oh, that's what you meant. Natty cakes. These natty cakes are so delicious. I've never had cakes like these before. Please tell my mum I'm very upset at her. She's never given me, the one she loves, the kid, these beautiful cakes before. So natty cakes, instead of meaning no cakes, became something to eat. To extend that type of story, there was one of the friends, they were devoutly Christian, and they came up to me and said, Ajahn Brahm, because they were Christian, they were trying to convert me, they said, you know that nothing is better than God? And I said, yes, I agree with you. And at first they were kind of thought, have I converted him? And when I explained, oh, you tricky old Buddhist monk, you make nothing into a thing. And that's actually what many people think the Nibbana is. Instead of being true to the Buddha's words, nothing there, gone. This nothing must be very delicious and everyone worships it. Okay, anyway. Why would one usually choose to ordain as a monk or nun? Is this the faster way to attain jhana and nibbana? Yes. And a bit controversial. Would a transgender female be ordained as a monk or as a nun? If there was a way, I've mentioned this to people before, if there's a way, yes, you'd find a way. Why not? They're human beings. That's good enough for me. Why would anyone choose to ordain as a monk or nun? Can lay people get enlightened? Yeah, of course. But why not get the way designed by the Buddha? This is the fast way. This similarly I always use. Can you walk to Sydney from here? You can, but it's not advisable. I would advise at least to get in a vehicle or get in an aircraft. They're not that expensive, one of these cheap aircraft, and you go all the way to Sydney reliably and comfortably. So that's why we have monks and nuns. This is the reliable way, designed by the Buddha. May all beings be free. That's a hard question. Are you free? Do you wish all beings to be free? Then you're not free. When you want something, you're not free. You've got something to do, a goal in life. So what to do is, instead of having ideas for other people, some people don't want to be free. Should we make them free just to show them what it's like? Many people in prison, I like the prison simile. If you're in prison, would you like to be free? Many people who are in jail have been in jail for so many years. They're afraid of being outside, being free. And they say that sometimes, I remember some of the prisoners themselves said this. I forget what the series was. There was some series on TV. What was it? I forget now. But anyway, they could actually see it inside the prison. They had TVs in there. But then they couldn't afford a TV when they were living outside. So they reoffended on purpose. Got put back in jail so they could see their TV show and they wouldn't miss the next episode. It actually happened. It sounds good, doesn't it? May all beings be free. Why didn't you ask the people what they want, rather than assume? Why is it some people want to, put even pets out of, put them out of their misery? You see people sometimes see an injured pet or something on the side of the road, and they want to shoot it. Look, it's hurting. I've got to put it out of its misery. Why don't you ask the pet? What you're doing is putting it out of your misery. All beings. Instead of like that, be kind. Be gentle. That's something you can do. Okay, this is one of our members. She had a dog. The dog had cancer. She tried everything she could to heal that little doggy. But eventually the cancer got so bad, she took it to the vet, and the vet said, I have to put it down. And this lady, she said, just can you give me a few minutes with my dog? Yeah, sure. And she followed my instructions. Before you tell the vet to euthanize your dog because it's got bad cancer, ask the dog first. And so that's what she did when she was alone with the dog. Looked it in the eyes, held it. This was her dog, like a part of the family. She'd known it so well. And just asked that question, do you want to die or carry on? And she got the clear message back from the doggy, carry on. So she took it back to the vet, just in the next room, and told the vet, no, I'm going to take it home. What? You call yourself a Buddhist? I thought you were compassionate and kind. What are you doing? You're torturing this dog. Yeah, I know you're not supposed to kill things, but you're putting this dog into a lot of pain. But she stood her ground and took the dog back home. 6 months later, she went back to the vet, carrying a dog fully recovered. And the vet looked at her and the dog and said, you Buddhists are very smart and wise and compassionate. Because it had made a full recovery. The vet couldn't know that, at the time anyway. That's what's going to happen. But it's the dog's choice. It's the pet's choice, not yours. And it's amazing what happens. Sometimes, the dog or the cat does make a full recovery. And only the dog or cat knows that. Okay. Dear Ajahn, there is now a lot of meditation in the West for things like anxiety, and this isn't linked to Buddhism. Can meditation be secular and still work? It's a kind of a band-aid, but the meditation gets you deeper into understanding the nature of your mind and how it works, and also the nature of your body and the position in this world. You can overcome anxiety. It's wonderful. You can do whatever you can to be able to ease people's problems in life. so wonderful. But is that called secular? It's still a beautiful part of Buddhism, it still works. So, but not just secular, just meditation. I always like to impress on people, and this is what my first meditation did. He said, your meditation gets so much easier and better if you keep precepts. So if you want to overcome anxiety through meditation, how about also focusing on precepts as well? And that's such a wonderful way to actually create more friendship in this world and less violence. It doesn't make any sense hurting anybody. It's okay. I've done a lot of questions already. There's only a few left. Could you please give us instructions for walking meditation? Yeah, you go in the room over there, you start on one end, go to the other end and come back again. Okay. Now, walking meditation is amazing, so I should give more instructions. Don't look to the left or the right, up or down. Just keep your attention about a body length in front of you. I like to put my hands in front of me. If you like, you can put your hands behind you, but put them in one place. Don't walk like you're on a military parade. And as you start walking comfortably, when you start walking, maybe start with your right foot. Doesn't matter, but just say your right foot. Don't look at the foot, feel it. Well, first of all, take shoes and sandals off, and socks even, so you can actually feel the texture of those yoga mats. If you want to walk somewhere else, like in your room or on the veranda, the walkways, you just can feel what's the texture underneath your feet. Sorry. And as you walk, you actually feel just moving one step. How does that feel? What do you have to do? All those muscles in your leg to move, so your right foot up. And as it goes up, how does it go up? Does it go straight up? Or does it go at some sort of angle? I know my feet, I've been doing this a long time obviously. My foot, as it goes up, it goes backwards a little bit. When it reaches the top, then it goes forward in an arc. And then when it comes down, it comes down. And what's the first part of your foot which actually touches the ground? What's the last part? And how it finds its balance. And then the weight transfers from one leg to the new leg which is now planted on the ground. And so the other leg, the left leg, can actually lift up and go forward and then go down. That's how my legs work. And there's so many movements in your legs, your lower legs, to be able to walk. And you become aware of so many of those. And it becomes fascinating. It becomes even joyful. And you get into very calm states of mind. I never realized what I was doing when I started doing walking meditation. I just enjoyed it. And in the hall which I did that walking meditation, it was about as long as this room here. It took me half an hour to get from one end to the other end and half an hour to go back again. You're not trying to be the slowest walking meditation, in the monastery. This is not sort of like Olympic Games, who can be slowest. It's just natural. And I knew it was really deep samadhi one day, not jhanas, but just really sort of deep. When I was doing my walking meditation, quite naturally, not trying to prove anything, it just was fun to just go slow and just be really fascinated by all the different movements in the legs. And then I heard this sound, almost like somebody was shouting my name from a long way away. The full name is Brahma Wangso, so they were shouting, Brahma Wangso. It's like you could discern it, but like it was so distant. I thought, who was doing that? And why were they doing that? So I took my attention away from my feelings in the legs, to this sound. And as I focused on it, I realized it was another monk shouting in my ear hole, right this far away. And I realized why he was shouting at me to try and get my attention, because I was supposed to go to a ceremony that morning, and I'd forgotten all about it. And he'd been sent to get me. But what was fascinating was, even just walking meditation, it's like sound was just so distant from me, even though someone was shouting in my ear. And that was kind of fascinating. Those 5 senses were mostly gone. Still enough left so I could hear him. Still enough of sight so I could see my feet moving and feel them. But, when someone's shouting in your ear hole and you feel it's just such a distance away, that was really cool. So anyway, that's how you do walking meditation. You go to the end, you turn around and come back again. One of the nice things about that, not so much a joke, you end up where you started. The idea of actually getting somewhere is not the point of meditation, it's actually going deeper inside of you and watching things vanish, not gaining more things. Ajahn Brahm was very strong on that. He said, you meditate to let go, not to gain things. Dear Ajahn Brahm, in theory, will there be a time in the future where all beings have been fully liberated? You'll have to wait a long time. How many times have we told you, don't think about the future? And the Buddha asked, and Ananda asked that question of the Buddha. He said, is everyone going to become enlightened? And he said, don't even ask those sorts of questions, that's not really relevant. But when people ask me, is everybody in this retreat going to be enlightened? I said, yes, except for you. Dear Ajahn Brahm, could you please give suggestions for practicing in between formal sitting and walking? Practicing in between. Okay. If you really get into the meditation, even when you're sitting down, when you get up, you can actually feel what parts of your body need to be moved to actually just to rise up. Do it slowly and mindfully as you can. You walk, if it's even just to the toilet or the walking meditation paths. One of the reasons why we had the walking meditation paths right next to the main hall where we sit, it was more difficult, more expensive, but at least we thought if you start to get into some nice deep meditation and your sitting posture is a bit worn out, you need a bit of exercise and moving your limbs, it's right next door to you. You don't have to walk a long way to the walking meditation path. And once the walking meditation you feel now you need to sit, it's right next door. Basically you don't have much distance to go from the walking hall to the sitting hall. It makes it far more powerful. But then sometimes you're walking, you're sitting, walking, sitting. Sometimes you ask your mind and it's just had enough of that silence. It wants to actually to do something, but not disturbing too much. That's why I invite you to actually to go walking, not just in the halls, but even just around on the paths, or even better, just in the forest, even just up to the top. But please don't take your mobile phone with you, and just back again, just to see the nature. Because that's something which kind of surprised me, that walking in nature, or like seeing the stars at night, or just seeing just all the different trees which grow in this Jhana grove place. There's so many trees here. And see if you can find the perfect one for me. The one which is dead straight, which has got no damage on the bark. You soon discover that every tree in this forest is damaged. And it makes you feel much more accepted in life. Because some of us feel, oh no, I'm too damaged. No one can like me. You find a perfect tree and you'll be the first to ever do one, to actually find one. They're all damaged, and the more damaged, you get your favourite tree, the one which you kind of like and you can associate with. As its limbs are all busted, some of the leaves have been eaten by animals or by bugs, and the tree is leaning all over the place. That's a beautiful one. Now, why are you trying to be perfect? Just be at peace and respect who you are, what you are. My understanding is that we can practice any meditation technique we want to, correct? It seems a bit of a loaded question. What does it say next? The idea being that all paths eventually lead to the same destination. Any shortcuts? Yeah, there is a shortcut. Shave off your hair, put on a brown robe. This is a shortcut. That's what you meant, wasn't it? I don't know, why do people want shortcuts? Shortcuts are always the longest way. There's enough Sri Lankan people in here. I still remember that, the Wetimuni clan over in Colombo. I forget which Wetimuni it was. But anyway, I gave a talk over in Kandy, and they said they'd take me back to Colombo. And halfway on the journey, I think, what was it? What was his name? One of the Wetimunis. Anyway, he teaches meditation these days over in, he used to, unless he's dead now. But anyway, he said, I know the shortcut. So he took me on the shortcut. Everyone else had arrived home about 2 or 3 hours earlier than I did. And he got lost, and he didn't have good phone coverage there. So it took him a long time. I think from Kandy, we ended up in the back roads, ended up somewhere near, I forget even the name, not Nediwala or something. Anyway, a long way south of Colombo, about 40 kilometers south we ended up, and that's a long way to go back up to Colombo. That was a shortcut. Has anybody ever found a shortcut which actually saves time? Every time in my life I've gone on a shortcut, it's always cost another 2 or 3 hours. Instead of going on a shortcut, the Eightfold Path. Dear Ajahn, is it okay for thoughts to come and go whilst one is watching the breath before practicing perceiving nimitta? Of course thoughts come and go, but eventually they go. And they go for a long time. When they go for a long time, you're still and silent. And when you're silent, that's when the beautiful lights come. And if you say, wow, those little animals in the forest, they run away. They know they're being watched. So, you can say wow after you've had the big ones. And they've gone after a few hours. And after a few hours of experience, nice nimittas and jhanas, then you say, wow. Not before. Make sense? Wow. Okay. I'm trying to do lots before. I've got 1 more minute till 8:30. Can you please tell us about the use of the soft toys, teddies? I just chose one today and it is so lovely. It really helps me to be happy and have metta towards myself, it and others. That's the best explanation. You know what? That first happened when I was teaching a retreat in Hong Kong. Ajahn Brahm just taught a retreat in that place where this young man brought 2 teddy bears which he had on the retreat. And afterwards, all the people on retreat, I said to share them around, and they are wonderful little symbols of loving kindness, non-threatening, soft, warm, it makes you feel happy, you can meditate with them. And they were offering huge amounts of money for those teddy bears. And I realized just how much people love those teddy bears. And so later on, I remember when Ajahn Sujato was here in those days, and so I asked him, got any teddy bears at home? So he actually offered his teddy bear to Jhana Grove. And that was the first one. And obviously, these teddy bears do not keep 8 precepts, because look how many teddy bears we've got now. And there people love them. And sometimes I shouldn't say this, but I am going to, because sometimes people say, you get the same teddy bear day after day for 9 days, and say, well, can I take it home with me, please? I say, yeah, of course you can. Because you get almost like a connection with that teddy bear. But make sure you donate a couple of teddy bears to replace them for other people. It's like your meditation partner, and it softens you and gives you that easy loving kindness and easy to get joy and happiness. It works. Okay? But sometimes you've got not just teddy bears, you've got some weird things. I mean, I think it's a snail, isn't it? That thing, yeah. I don't know what that is. But anyway, you get a connection with it because, sometimes, you're a bit weird and you look at that and say, oh, that's mine. I can relate to that. Anyway, the use of the soft toys and teddies, they're actually brilliant. Now that is bear awareness with a teddy bear. How does one quieten the ego? When I have the retreat, a lot of people will ask questions and challenge why I do this or the techniques. My meditation is being taken up role-playing, outside window discussions. P.S. I know the future doesn't exist or doesn't work out that way. Okay. Did I get that? Yeah, okay. How does one quieten the ego? After a while, there's nothing much to say. And even like silence, we have this noble silence outside. And what happens, we often have the rule that once the retreat is finished on Sunday, then you're allowed to talk to one another. A lot of people say, I'm not talking. You really appreciate just how beautiful silence is. You don't have to say. But you can still smile at one another. So if you've got people in your room, in your sort of cottage, please smile at them. Even people on the table where you eat, give them a smile. That's all they need to know that they're valued, they're respected. But you don't need to have a conversation with them. And I find it fascinating when all those times I made that announcement on a Sunday morning, retreat's ending today, you can talk to each other for today. No one wants to. They've experienced the beauty of silence and the truth of silence. They don't want to disturb that. And once that silence is there, the next thing is you don't want to think. And the thoughts are really coarse. They're approximations. You think about something, not into anything. Always going about. And it's always old ways of looking at something. To get insight, see things in you, you have to quieten all those thoughts. When you see the value of silence, you love it. I can't hardly make you talk. So anyway, when you see the value of silence, you don't want to talk. Oops. Okay, next question. I have visions during my meditations of varying scenarios. They don't last long. For example, a military unit, a couple of them in jeeps appear in my meditation. Please tell them not to honk their horns or make any noise. I took up your advice and cared for what was in front of me, and it was like a movie. They were driving along in a stream, then disappear. It was in colour. I was not feeling sleepy or dreamy. Is this a nimitta? P.S. I've never worked in the military. This is what we call like a complicated nimitta. But it doesn't matter, you can make use of this. One of those complicated nimittas, which I had the first complicated one. And I ask and encourage people to enjoy these. The one which I had years ago, that I was a Buddhist monk, but in this nimitta, it was like I had all these powers, and I was combating with this Hindu Swami, or Hindu saint, flying up in the air, zap, 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 zap. Okay, like a man, guy. And I knew it wasn't going to get me anywhere. I knew I was going to win because it was my fantasy, or my nimitta. But the reason I say that don't be afraid of that is because sometimes you meditate for days and days and days and days, and it gives you a little bit of experience of what this mind can do. And it's not dangerous at all, because it just strengthens this idea of being in this world of the mind. And as long as it's nothing sort of evil or anything. But anyway, the other thing which I remember doing, which was a much more refined nimitta, still complicated, but much more refined, was a scene of this trees in green valleys with a river in the valley below. And that was nice to see, but it was still complex. So if you ever have any nimittas like that, it's a nimitta. It's not a dream, you're fully awake, aware, but it's similar to a dream. And then I focused on one of the trees on those hills. One of the trees, it drew me in, because on one of the leaves on one of those trees there was a dewdrop sparkling in the early morning sunshine. And as soon as I allowed my mind just to focus on that sparkle, it's a huge nimitta comes up. And that takes you into the deep meditations. Whenever you see a complex nimitta, like if I saw military trucks, there'll be something in there which is the most beautiful part of that scene. I allow my mind to get pulled into that beautiful part. It may be just a headlamp on one of the trucks which was shining. And then I go to the most beautiful part of that most beautiful part and keep on getting sucked in. It's important to go in, not to go out or go somewhere else. Go into the most beautiful part of the most beautiful part of the most beautiful part. And that turns into nimittas. And it just becomes simple, stationary, and brilliant. Please remember that advice. Go into the middle of the middle of the middle, the most beautiful part. If good states of mind mean healthy, then why is Donald Trump so healthy at his late 70s? Is he? So sometimes, you say health, but people can mask that health. And I think I sort of read somewhere that when he had his medical done by this military doctor, Donald Trump dictated the report, and the military doctor never actually wrote what he saw, but just wrote what Mr. Trump told him. Does ill health mean something wrong with my practice? No. That's one of the reasons why I say, if you've got some disease, or you go to see the doctor, what do you say to the doctor? Doctor, there's something wrong with me. Why do you say that? Disease is natural to this body. Sickness, ill health is natural. It's the way the body deals. The way the body deals with infections is to have a fever to try and burn off that virus. If you had some wrong things, food poisoning, it tries to give you diarrhea so you can just excrete it all. So many of these, if you can't move, it's the body's trying to keep you still so the healing can happen. That's one of the reasons why if ever you have to go and see your doctor, please never say there's something wrong with me, doctor. Please say there's something right with me, doctor. I'm sick again. To do that is taking away the stigma of sickness. It's part of life and part of health. It's a way to get to health. And if you say there's something wrong with me, that having cancer is wrong, or having this sickness is wrong, then you're stigmatizing it. And people just don't go and get treatment if that's the case. They're kind of afraid of it, ashamed of it. Please don't do that. Be honest with the sicknesses. Nothing wrong with it. So if ever any doctors here, if they get somebody goes to them and say, doctor, there's something right with me, I'm sick again, you know they're a disciple of Ajahn Brahm. Well, I told you to do that. It makes sense? Have you ever done that? Gone to see your doctor? Something wrong with me again today, doctor. I've got a fever. That makes sense? Am I going on too long? You paying attention? Okay. Here we go. You should show much more energy than Trump, Ajahn. Bad advertisement if people think Trump has jhana more often than you do. That's fake news. Okay, make you laugh. How important is walking meditation to attaining jhana? It's helpful. Important, it means you can continue your practice of meditation when your body would normally get stiff. So it's very helpful. Dear Ajahn Brahm, about the walking meditation. Oh, about walking meditation, goodness. About the walking meditation room, I may need to rephrase sorry, no complaints. Just an idea to upgrade the place. The softwood planks can have designs or colours to differentiate the paths for yogis to walk on. Maybe in the future the 3 rooms can become a larger meditation hall when JG builds 5 more cottages, looking into the future for old and new yogis. Thank you. It's interesting that you put so much effort, I've done this all my life, trying to build the perfect retreat centre, as I did the perfect monastery at Jhana Grove. Do you have a perfect monastery at Dharmasara? Is your monastery perfect at Anukampa Grove? I really tried to do that. And then somebody else comes along, oh, we can do it better. No, sometimes. It's nice to do it for other people, but don't do too much. Well, now you're here, please leave it as it is. This is my old saying, when you want something more, you can't enjoy what you already have. This is good enough for now. Later on, if you've got a bit of extra money and time, but don't just give like suggestions. Actually, maybe that might be an idea, to have a complaints box. People often tell me that this is a beautiful retreat centre, but let's actually find out by having a complaints box. Because they tried that, I think, as that IMS in Barre, Massachusetts. They said they'd really put a lot of money into that retreat centre to try and make it as perfect as possible. And they thought, well, we're trying our best. Let's get some advice from the people who use this place. So they put in complaints boxes. They got filled up to the brim in the first day. And they were surprised, why? We put so much effort into this, it's so close to perfect, then why do we get so many complaints? The closest you get to perfection, the more complaints you get. If this was rough, but this is the best we could do, you don't get so many complaints. It's the psychology, we're almost there. Just a little bit more, and then we can be perfect. It never works. Anyway, Please explain the three fetters that a Sotapanna is free from. There is no self, but consciousness, a process. Yes, a process of mind consciousness. And there is no. Instead of calling it a self, I usually call it no permanent essence to you. Like the essence is the heart of things. Just like in science, what is the heart of matter? The essence of matter? It's the atom, they thought. And then this Kiwi guy, Rutherford, he split the atom many years ago. I remember that because I remember when you go to Cambridge, you can go into the room where Rutherford split the atom. It's a really cool place to visit. But what did the word atom mean? It's a Greek word for indivisible. They thought that in the science, the theory of science, that stuff has an indivisible particle, and we add all these other bits and pieces to it, and we get all the different stuff of life. But Rutherford stopped that idea. But was he the first to split the atom? The first to split the atma? What does the atma mean? That was a Greek word for the sense of self, coming from the Sanskrit word. These have so similar meanings. The Buddha split the atma way before Rutherford split the atom. This was supposed to be the indivisible, fundamental essence of especially mental consciousness, of your mind, the self. The Buddha split it. Anyway, number 2, the other things of the Sotapanna. There is no idea of a permanent essence. It's not a consciousness, it's a process, fine. What kind of rites and rituals? It's the belief that rites and rituals will lead you to Nibbana. Just by doing some chanting, or saying this or saying that. It's not the rites and rituals which actually lead you to Nibbana. It's actually just practicing the Eightfold Path. Okay, number 2, we give dana, we perform sila, we meditate. Are these enough to say we have faith in the Triple Gem? Not really. It's why you're performing the sila, why you meditate, why you give dana. For a good example, many years ago, again in Sri Lanka, please excuse me, in Colombo, there was this businessman, and he didn't really like going to the temple. He liked doing business and making money. But he called himself a Buddhist, so he went every Wesak time to the temple, just because his wife just really sort of gave him a hard time if he didn't. And one day when he was at the temple, listening to the Wesak talk, he heard the monks say that when a person dies, the best thing to keep in mind when you die is the Triple Gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. That's what the Triple Gem meant. So as he was listening, he started wandering off in his mind, and he finally came up with this amazing idea. He told his wife, "I figured out how to beat the system." He never liked going to temples anymore. Instead, it just so happened he had 3 sons. And he renamed the eldest son Buddha, the second son Dhamma, the third son Sangha. Because he knew when he really got sick and old, his children had to be at his bedside when he grows old, on his deathbed. And it was working perfectly. We got really sick, and the doctor said, "No, there's no recovery from this. This is going to be your last illness." And there at his bedside, in his last few hours, his 3 sons, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And remember, this priest, who was very well respected, say, if you keep thinking about the Buddha, Dhamma, the Sangha on your deathbed, you're bound to get reborn in a beautiful heaven realm. one of the best things to think about. So he said, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. His 3 sons, I'm going to heaven. Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And his plan was working perfectly. Except, at the last minute, he thought, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. What if my 3 sons were on my bedside? Who's looking after my shop? And that's when he died. I know it's a silly joke, but that's my character, you know that. Ajahn Brahm, after deep meditation, I tried to recall my past lives. I recollected my childhood memories. Good. Those I already forgotten, but I couldn't recollect my past life. There were some scenarios that I cannot identify. How to direct mind to discover my past life, please? I'm glad you recalled your childhood memories, because that gives you an idea of how this works. And, because of those rules which I have, I cannot let you know of my past life memories. But I can let you know of my early life memories. And I love telling this story because it kind of, really inspired me. After a nice meditation, deep meditation, I asked myself this question. Please try this yourself. What is my earliest memory? So it was broad enough that sometimes you could get some really early memories. But what came into my mind first of all when I did this, I don't mind telling this because I know the loopholes of what a monk can do, what he can't do. Loopholes, yeah, that's about right. And what came into my mind straight away was being a baby in my baby's pram when I was only a few weeks old. It's weird, because I was a monk. I don't know exactly how many years as a monk when this sort of happened, but you can remember back being a baby, being pushed by your mother. And at the same time, I remembered all the things I had in my baby's pram. You could actually explore it. And the weird thing was I could recognize everything, not by what it looked like, but what it smelt like. The dominant sense I had at the time, this is how I remembered it, was my sense of smell. I remember this little toy I had, light blue, lighter blue than those blankets, which my mother called Porky, the pig. It was shaped like a pig, and it rattled. I loved that little pig. As a few weeks old kid. You remembered all of that very easily, but the weird thing was just remembering the smell of everything. That's how I recognized my world. It was only years later when I gave these examples of what past life memories are, that somebody, a doctor who works with children, said, yeah, that's exactly right. It's well known the first sense which develops in your life is your sense of smell. You know what that feels like. But the other thing which was interesting in that experience, that when I told others about that experience and said, was that like a dream, or are you sure that you were re-experiencing your early childhood? And I said yes. There's no doubt in my mind at all that was me when I was really a kid. And I don't know why I was so dumb, but of course, when you have those deep meditations, afterwards, when you come out afterwards, those 5 hindrances are gone for a long time. And then one of those hindrances which people hardly ever talk about is a hindrance of doubt. And of all those other 4 hindrances, I can understand what they are. But for years, I can never fully understand what this thing doubt means. And then I look back at that experience, oh yeah, that's it. Because what you experience, you have no doubt that hasn't been distorted at all. And even to this day, it's hard to explain, what the lack of doubt feels like. That's the only way I can do it. Tell you about an experience like that. And it felt different from every other experience because the doubt was missing. And anyway, to make it interesting for you, there was another person who used to come on these retreats. She's getting a bit old now, but she did. I won't give more details. But when she tried this, she's a very kind and giving lady, and so when she asked for her earliest memory, she got herself as a baby, and she was actually sucking milk from her mum. But when she looked at her mum, the person she saw, in this recollection of her early life memory, was not her mother. You can imagine what that had felt like. Again, she had no doubt that this was her in the early part of this life. So she came to see me in the interview, said, "Look, I just had this experience. What the heck's going on? Is there something my mother hasn't told me?" And of course, that's really quite sort of problematic for somebody. I said, well, the only thing you can do is when you go home, just next time you see your mother, ask her. But don't just blurt it out. Just say, "I had some lovely meditations, and have you been?" And then just slowly come round to it. I had this vision after my meditation of breastfeeding by somebody. It wasn't you. Are you my mother? She had the guts to say that. And the mother was actually fascinated by this. Because the mother said, "What did this woman look like?" And you have a lovely memory of these experiences because your mind is clear, it's not distorted. So I had beautiful memories of this early life memory. And she described this woman, and her mother was kind of dumbfounded. She said, "That was real. I am your mother. That was the wet nurse we hired to look after you in those early days. We haven't got no photograph of her, but this is a really good description of her." And even the mother got a lot of confidence in the power of meditation to do this. As a young girl, she shouldn't be able to remember this, but she did, and she could describe this woman in her meditation experience. It does actually work. But that's only just in early life. And if you want to find out what happened to you in a previous life, sometimes that works too. One of our other members, I like telling this story, he remembered, this was under hypnotic regression. Under hypnotic regression, that he remembered in his previous life, the reason he did hypnotic regression was because he had this, not really a problem, but always something which kind of he couldn't explain. Why, even as a young boy without any training, he knew how to fly an aircraft. Kind of a weird skill. But he could do that, he just knew how to do it. So he went under hypnotic regression, and he found, of course, he was a pilot in his previous life. And he was working for the British Air Force during the Second World War. And he recalled he was flying supplies, not a combat jet or anything, during the Second World War to Gibraltar. And he recalled that something went wrong with the propeller. It was just a fault in design. And the aircraft didn't land properly on Gibraltar Airport and crashed and burnt. He remembered all of that, with just a lot of pain. He was a pilot apparently, and he felt so responsible for all the other airmen on that vehicle. And fortunately, the person who did that regression, I don't mind saying that, was Dennis. I used to be our past president, and he told me about it. And that evening at Noramara, I had a free evening, so I went on a computer. And I'm not usually that good at getting information from computers, but that day I just pressed air crashes, Second World War, Gibraltar, and it came up. It had all the details there, just like he'd said. And that was kind of spooky. These hypnotic regressions had actually managed to find out what had actually happened. Interesting stuff. Do you think that's interesting? But sometimes people have these past life memories, either hypnotic regression, or like this case, there was this mother and his young daughter, a young woman, she was about 16 or something, and she had anorexia. You know what anorexia is? You know, I've got anorexia. Because you look in the dictionary, and I looked at the definition of anorexia in the dictionary. It says, you look in the mirror and you think you're fat. Oh, come on, laugh. So, anyway, this was real anorexia, and no one could fix it, so she was dying. So they decided to go and try hypnotic regression. And anyway, when she was being regressed, it was quite easy to regress her, and she said that in her previous life, she was the younger of two sisters, and they'd fallen in love with the same guy, but her elder sister was more attractive. So she said that's why the elder guy married her. So the guy married her elder sister, not her, and that broke her heart. She got so depressed she committed suicide in her previous life. You can understand why she's trying so hard, to be attractive, so she didn't have to go through the pain which she went through before committing eventually suicide. And anyway, when she was telling this story, her mother had to be present because she was only 16 years of age. But it was her mother who was going hysterical. And so eventually this poor therapist had to deal with the daughter and the mother, but the mother was much worse. So once she got the young girl out of hypnosis and settled her down, then she asked her mother, why are you going hysterical? And that's when the mother said, I was that older sister. She said, I never told my daughter this. It happened before she was born. I had this younger sister, we fell in love with the same guy, her father. We never told the daughter this, but then she was our first child. Got reborn together again. And that was just so unusual. There's no way you can actually doubt that. Did I explain it well enough for you? Okay. I like it when you have these interesting stories. There's another guy, he's a Buddhist over in Sydney, and he told me that his mother was a business lady. She never got married, and the one thing in her life she hated was paying tax. She was notorious for that. Any reason she would not to pay tax to the government. So apparently, that when his eldest mother, when his mother died, that he inherited only a few parts of her possessions, because her mother not only hated paying tax, she also hated religions, all religions, because they wanted to get donations from you. And so he was a Buddhist, and his auntie knew that, and so decided only to give a few old bits of crockery to her Buddhist son. And he didn't get much out of the inheritance. But anyhow, after a few weeks, or after a few months, his wife gave birth to her first daughter. And the daughter, everyone comes around to see the new member of the family. They all say, oh, that looks like, your auntie. And of course it was. When he would come in with some of the crockery he'd inherited, as soon as the daughter could speak, she'd burst out, Daddy, that's my cup. Daddy, give me my cup. When he went past her old mansion, Daddy, that's my house. That's my house. Take me to my house. And more interestingly, when she went back past these billboards on the motorways, the tollways in Sydney, and he said, Daddy, what does that word tax mean? And apparently, Daddy would say, taxes, if you get any money, like even some of the pocket money I give you, you have to give a certain amount to the government. He said, Daddy, I'm not giving any of my pocket money to any government. She still had that old character from her past, and that was, obviously, the auntie reborn. Anyway, that's past lives. I think I told you the last story, didn't I? About the Italian? Here. The people are screwing out their faces. I don't think they did. I give you so many stories in so many different places. You must have heard it someplace. But anyway, this was on the London Underground. And somebody came up and sat next to me. That's why I like going on the public transport, so people can actually see you. So anyway, she came, sit next to me and said, I hear that, you look like a Buddhist monk. Are you a Buddhist monk? I said, yes. I remember her next comment, a real monk? Yes. Can I ask you a few questions? And one of the questions she asked wasn't about Buddhism. She was interested to know. And so she said, I said to her, one of the things which Buddhism is noted for is like a reincarnation or rebirth, to be more accurate. And I said, I remembered on one of these retreats here in Jhana Grove, there was this guy, he was Italian from birth. Any Italians here? Who were born in Italy or parents from Italy? Yeah, someone like you. And anyway, he came up to me one day and he said, he had these, not early nimittas, and he said, first nimitta he had, it was like he was a strand of spaghetti. And that's really weird. And the second nimitta he had, it was a piece of macaroni. And I understood his experience really easily. He was recollecting his past lives. And that's exactly what those people in the underground train did. Some groaned, some laughed. Well, at least they weren't looking at their smartphones anymore. That's something more interesting. Sorry for that joke, but that's a nice place to finish off. Recollecting past lives. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. I did quite a few of them. There's always more for tomorrow. Is that okay? I went on till, it's 9:09 now, is that too late? No, I think you're too asleep, too tired to answer. Okay, but maybe if you have already one in the box over here, hasn't been answered yet, can you maybe restrain from actually putting another one in the box, if at all possible? But if it's something which is really, really important, then you please put it in the box. Okay? Make sense? No one's answering. I think a protest.